Hello and welcome to the UFOcast. I'm Luke.
And I'm Michael.
And this is episode 3, looking at Flight Path. Again, we are still, for those who are watching along with us on DVD, we are watching in the DVD order. And so this story is one that we get to kind of see a little bit more about the aliens' operating methods on Earth. This isn't just the episode starts with a UFO coming in and that's what's going on. There's a UFO already on the ground, and they appear to have done something to this guy, who then drives off back to SHADO HQ, and the plot then unfolds from there. What did we think of this one, Michael?
I must admit, I did like it. It felt a more immediate storyline, and there's some effect shots halfway through that actually really impressed me, which I'm sure we'll get to. But obviously, for me, you know the way that when you name Friends episodes, it's like it's the one with the dog or the one with the monkey and things like that. This is the one with Arthur Daly. So in my head, that's what it'll always be. But as an opening, bit you've just discussed, particularly good.
Yes, and let's just pick up on that. So I have never seen Minder.
No.
I have. So I know that. What's the actor's name? You're gonna have
George
to
Cole.
Here. George Cole.
You have just asked me what an actor's name is. That is just weird. We're on the other side of the mirror here, guys.
Yes. So when this episode began, and I was watching, I was like, okay, I know that this actor is a well-known actor, and that he's famous for something. And so when I first watched it, I would have looked him up as being, right, this is George Cole. This is the guy who is most famous for playing a character called Arthur Daly in a show called Minder.
I know where you're going with this. You're about to say it, but the place I know him from is from St. Trinian's.
No. I don't know him from anything else. I literally don't know him from anything else.
Wow.
It's this episode of UFO is my main interaction with George Cole as an actor. So, anybody who's listening who is more familiar with him might go wow, and I can see, Michael, that you're saying kind of wow. So you're going to have to fill in everybody who doesn't know who George Cole is and what Minder was about on that. So can you tell us a little bit more about him and how that might color your perception of the character that he plays in this?
I've kind of worked out what the issue is. You are a few years younger than me. Now,
That's true.
If you were in the 80s watching TV, the big ITV drama, and I could be wrong here, that was produced by Verity Lambert, was Minder. And it's about an ex-boxer. Early on, it's a bit gritty, and it does change. Also, I believe it might have been one of Janet Fielding's first TV performances, because she plays, weirdly, an Australian. Sorry, we're all coming at this from a Doctor Who point of view, but leave me with it. And George Cole's character was a wheeler dealer, wide boy. Imagine sort of an ITV version of Del Boy. He'd done quite well, but he owed a lot of people money. He was always living quite close to the wind. In fact, he's very Del Boy now, I come to think about it. And he was Easy Stand. But early on in George Cole's career, unbeknownst to me at the time as a child, he'd played a character in the St. Trinian's films about a girls' school where he'd played Flash Harry, I believe the character was called, who was a wheeler dealer, who was someone who could work in the black market, who could get you anything, who was always had get-rich-quick schemes. And George Cole's character in this was basically a grown-up version of the same character. And he needed someone to look after him when money needed to be collected and things like that. Now, it was a comedy. It was sold as a drama comedy. It was one of the first of its kind. And it was much beloved. It really was. It went on for series after series. And eventually, Dennis Waterman, who was the Minder in the title, left. And for a few seasons, possibly 2, there was another character came in as his new Minder. It was one of those ITV things where the character leaves in between seasons, so you never get to see a leaving scene, and it's really annoying from an audience point of view. But you do absolutely, and they even had a Christmas single that was almost #1. That was on Christmas Top of the Pops a few weeks ago on BBC 4. That blew me away because I'd just never seen this song at all. What shall I get for her indoors? It was like, Captain Mannering's wife in Dad's Army? You never got to see her. Well, you never got to see George Cole's character, her indoors, ever in the series, and you might possibly have seen her at one point, and it went on like that. So it was a drama comedy. It was much beloved. It was and he was an iconic character. And then you go back and you see him appearing in other stuff. I'm pretty sure there's an episode of The Professionals with him in, where he plays someone who owns a computer firm. There's he does appear ridiculously in lots and lots of other popular culture because he was a jobbing actor. Think Patrick Troughton, but obviously he was a bit more typecast in the characters he could portray. So when you see Arthur Daly turn up in UFO, it immediately makes me go, oh, he's a good actor. I'm aware of that. I wonder what he's going to bring to this part. Why is he sweating? So that's where, in the first few seconds of seeing him on screen, you know he's the big name in the episode. And that's kind of it. I'm sure I could talk more at great length, but this isn't the Arthur Daly podcast. This is UFO. Perhaps we should go on.
So in this episode, he's playing a character called Paul Roper, who is a member of SHADO.
Can I just say, I actually wrote that down this time because I know how crap I can be, how truly awful I can be at remembering characters' names. So, Paul Roper. Hey!
Paul Roper.
Yeah.
And Paul Roper is a man of a certain age who has a younger wife, and he is being blackmailed by someone into giving some information that he has put through Sid.
Now, Sid's in orbit. We've not really discussed Sid that much since our first episode, but Sid's in orbit around Earth. Now, I've done a little drawing in the corner of my notebook that says having a moon base is kind of pointless. But I'm sure we'll cover that anyway for Earth defense. Because what you need is a ring of satellites. Because if you were the UFOs, surely you'd come from the exact opposite direction. Because you'd know where the moon was, and you would just come from the other side of the Earth if you were coming to Earth, so that you wouldn't even appear on any detection.
Yes.
I know it's kind of cool to have a moon base, but
yes,
it's kind of a bit pointless as well.
Yes, well, it's one of these things where the distances involved and quite what these machines are capable of. Because the speed at which the UFOs are going, we're told, is many times the speed of light. And
but
so
they still show up on our screens, so that's very
they still show up on our screens. Well, that was what episode 1 was about. Episode 1 was about this Utronic equipment that was going to enable us to track them by superior means. But then the fact that the interceptors are supposed to be able to take off from the moon and attempt to intercept any UFO that comes in, you're right. It would make sense for the aliens to just fly in from the other side of the Earth, and then they wouldn't have to deal with Moonbase.
Yeah, but anyway,
I guess that's where Sid, or in this episode, he's referred to as SID, rather than Sid, Space Intruder Detector. I guess that's where Sid comes in that Sid is a satellite that is orbiting the Earth, which is picking UFOs up. But as you point out, it would make sense to have several SIDs surrounding the Earth, so that whichever way they come from, that they can be picked up.
Yes. Yeah, but that's just, you know what? From a Doctor Who point of view, we are pedantic in the extreme, and we're willing to pick holes in practically anything. But
yes, so let's not do that.
There's also another major plot hole later on to do with Sid, which I'll come back to. So plot-wise, he's put something through Sid, and he's got some numbers that someone wants. That's all we know from an audience point of view at this point.
And this this allows me to pick up on an aspect of filming that you don't really get anymore these days, or at least if it's done these days, it's done a lot better. And that is what's known as day for night filming.
Oh yes.
Now, because there's this whole thing of Roper and his wife have been out for a meal. They come home. She's a bit nervy. He gets her into the house, and then he goes out to his car to ring someone up on his phone and give him this information that he's being blackmailed about. And all the scenes outdoors, it's supposed to be midnight. I think they say in the dialogue that it's about midnight. So it's supposed to be pitch black, and yet it's not.
Indeed.
Because at the time, they didn't have the camera equipment that was... somebody who's more versed in the history of cameras can correct me, so please email in.
I'm about to, but go for it.
UFOcast@yahoo.com. But the idea being that in order to do nighttime scenes, you had to film during the day and expose the film in such a way and do some post-production stuff on it to make it look like it was at night. But it doesn't look like it's at night.
It's even more practical than that. It costs more money to have actors working at night. right? You schedule it in, and a night shoot is a much more difficult thing to orchestrate. We did this in producing. So shooting day for night on video was basically just a matter of clicking a few filter switches and then shooting it differently. The problem was you had to watch out for shadows, because where were the shadows coming from? That was a major thing. But doing it on film is doable. It's not a problem, but it's usually a budgetary or time-wise, time management thing. So you've only got your actor for X number of days. Factoring in a night makes it more complicated. Also, it depends what time of year you're shooting, because you might have a nighttime shoot you could fit in around 8 o'clock, which means just extending the shooting day by a few hours. But if you're shooting in the summer, a nighttime shoot, or even a shoot in the blink, which is the twilight moment between daytime and nighttime, for any listeners, I know you'll know this, but it does make sense to shoot things at various times. So yes, shooting day for night on film is easier than on video. But it's usually, at this point in history, was done for, as what I was told, was for practical budgetary reasons.
Yeah, actually, now you say that makes a lot more sense. And I guess another reason would be union involvement.
Yes, without question.
The unions were quite hot on shutting down production so that people could go home for the night.
Yes, especially in the 70s.
I know that. Certainly that's how it worked in TV studios. I assume that there would, again, be slightly more latitude when it came to location filming on film.
Yes.
But yes, and it's one of those interesting artifacts of 60s and 70s TV that, again, when you watch it, you go, what am I watching? And that's the reason why. It's because they're shooting in the day and treating it to look like it's at night.
You know the way that your brain always tries to justify things that you're seeing to make them more real. In my head, it was always a really bright full moon, and that's what I liked to believe. That is what I tried to believe on that one. So yes, day for night shooting is what happens here.
Yes, and so Roper has passed this information on. Unbeknownst to him, he's being spied upon by...
Dun dun dun! The man from the opening credits.
Whose name you keep referring to him by his Doctor Who name, but it's
Freeman.
Yes, it's Freeman. Yes, so Alec Freeman goes off and spies on him, and then they haul him in for interrogation, and we get another of these tests.
I've got it written down here.
Computer testing scene, don't we?
It's Adventures in Human Resources again.
Yes.
As soon as you've been to the moon, they sit you down for a chat, because Freeman's not been around his house yet, because there's a whole thing about somebody being at the door and George Cole revealing that he's got a shotgun in the cupboard that isn't under lock and key at all.
Yes.
I'll be using this gun later on in the episode. I'll just place it here.
Ahead. Yes, it's a literal Chekhov's gun, isn't it?
Yes.
It's the if there's a gun on the mantelpiece in Act 1 of the play, by Act 3 you should have fired that gun, otherwise it shouldn't be in the play.
Unless it's there just to confuse people who know about Chekhov's gun.
Of course, yes. And by Chekhov's gun, we're not talking about Star Trek's Chekhov.
Sadly not, which is what I thought when I first heard about it.
We're talking about the Russian playwright Anton Chekhov, as he should more rightly be.
Chekhov from Star Trek is named after.
Of course. Yes, I've leaped ahead of myself, haven't I? Yes, we have the whole... He's come back from the moon, he has all these tests, and it's these tests that tip them off that something's going wrong. They realise he's quite stressed. Freeman clearly is a friend of Roper's outside of SHADO, and so they're tipped off, something's going on, let's spy on him, let's find out what's going on, he's being blackmailed. And talking of Chekhov, did you notice, even more than last episode, the tests that he underwent in this episode, I did not understand at all.
You know what? Because I've got it playing in the background as we talk, and I'm looking at that scene as we speak right now, and it makes absolutely no sense. He appears to be being shown pages from an instruction manual.
Yeah.
Perhaps it's some sort of IKEA assembly thing, and he's just having flashbacks to having to build something.
And then he also gets a shot of St. Basil's Cathedral in Moscow for some reason.
And also the Palace of Westminster with the clock tower that contains Big Ben for the pedantic amongst us. Weirdly, I don't understand. And then it just keeps saying positive, negative. It's like it's like he's watching an episode of The Prisoner on a screen, and it's made him sweat.
Yes, and he basically has to press one of two buttons. It's supposed to kind of test his stress in decision making.
Yeah.
But anyway, it works, and they figure out he's under stress. Sweat's pouring
The fact
out
that
his
he's
brow.
sweating profusely.
Yes.
He looks like
It's
somebody standing next to him with a spray gun. Or they're shooting a water pistol into his face while he's asking the questions.
To be fair, that's probably how the effect was achieved on camera.
That is true. No, somebody's got a really expensive super soaker and they're shooting it in his face while they're asking him questions. It's all part of the modern techniques of human resources stress testing. Without question. Right, can I just say, the recurring theme, and not just Anderson stuff, but in ITC in general, of older man with younger attractive wife, it's and I hate using this word, it's a bit of a meme. It really is. It's a 1960s and 70s recurring TV nonsense.
Yes. So I think it's fair to say that where episodes 1 and 2 have certainly made some strides in portraying a world where we've moved on in terms of gender stereotypes, this episode drags us right back into dependent wives.
Yes.
Very pathetic, neurotic character, shall we say. The woman dependent on the husband, that she's waiting around at home all day for him to come home.
In her
reading
negligee.
magazines.
Because that's what people do, stay at home all day. They sit around in their pants waiting for their other halves to turn up and just going, oh yes, you've caught me here looking attractive at you. And it's a pointless stuff. It really irritates me.
And they sleep in separate bedrooms.
Sleep separate beds. They've got that whole...
Oh, yes, separate beds. Yeah. Sorry, yeah.
They've got separate beds, but in between them... Right, I know this is the future because he's got a car phone. Oh, yeah, that's technology for you. A cordless car phone. Yeah, you'll get done for using that. But he also, in the bedside cabinet, in between them, lies a massive supply of sleeping pills. He's just willing to dole out at the drop of a hat. Are you slightly stressed, darling? Here, have some Valium. It's appalling. I think that his first reaction whenever anything happens is A, to lie, and B, I know it's a secret organisation, so he has to hold things back a bit. But it's like, here you are, have some sedatives. I've got a box full here in this bedside cabinet between our two beds. I know I have a younger attractive wife, but I clearly intend doing nothing about it. It's just not good. I don't like it. Oh, and at the end, in the photograph of the wife, and I don't want to spoil anything, isn't she lying on a double bed?
I can't say I studied the photograph that...
No, because they show you it, and I went, who's that? Sorry.
Also, I think at this point, because we are talking about this episode, if you haven't watched it, go away and watch it before you come back.
Indeed,
so
it's spoilerific.
I don't think we're spoiling anything if we leap ahead to the end and the fact that everybody dies.
It was 47 years ago. I think we're all right.
Yes. But again, this episode, having had an episode at the beginning of the series which is quite bleak in terms of, hey, your sister's dead and her heart's been carved out by an alien to use as his heart. Last week was a little bit more light-hearted.
With only a couple of major deaths, yes.
Yes. And then a possible kind of relationship picking up. This one is, so the aliens are blackmailing you over your wife. You're going to give them information. We've found out, so you're going to have to rectify the problem by going on a suicide mission. And by the way, if you do come back alive, your wife's dead.
Oh, and no, you've missed a very important bit. And there is a traitor in our midst somewhere. Now, as an audience, you know where he is because you saw him in the opening sequence. So you've got, as the audience, more information. But it's all about flushing out the traitor in Shadow HQ, using these poor unfortunates as bait.
Yes.
Which is how come they have to release George Cole after they've interrogated him. And he drives off in one of the Shadow mobiles along Route 4, which I do like the idea that all of the motorways in England have been renamed routes and have got numbers now, which is great. It's better than... he's driving up the M62. Oh, he'll be very slow then.
Yes.
Yeah, but no, he's not. He's not doing that. He's going up a strange country road that's lined by trees, because they always are in this program, never in real life. And he drives. But can I just say, the UFO attacking the car sequence is glorious, and the exploding garage is just one of the best things. One of the problems with model shooting is there are two things you can't scale down. You can't scale water down because water is always the same size as itself. So you have to make big models to make water look like water and not look like a thing in a tank. And fire doesn't scale down well. Some of the early Anderson puppet shows, you can see that, especially in like Thunderbirds and things like that. But the earlier ones that have got a piece of fire burning, it doesn't have scale. And it's very difficult to rescale it, which is why nowadays you film it separately and put it in post. But the shot of the exploding garage, petrol station, or gas station, whatever you want to call it, it's to scale. It's brilliant. I can't fault it at all. And that's after he's released in order to flush out the spy. So
yes, and then the aliens decide to blow him up because he's accidentally put in one digit wrong into SID. And so they think that he's betrayed them by giving them some wrong information. So
I just thought it was because he wasn't needed anymore.
No, well, that was initially, and then there's a scene before they send him to the moon where they talk, where he realizes that they've given the aliens the wrong information, and that and Straker says something like, "Oh, it took us like an hour to figure it out. You think the aliens must have figured it out in minutes? That's why they've come to kill you because they think you've betrayed them."
Right, now, this brings me to my gigantic plot hole, right?
Okay.
I find some of the stereotyping a bit niggly and some of the way it's fulfilled and all of the writing problematic, but at its core, the whole program hinges on George Roper giving the aliens some figures that have been put through SID.
Right.
Are you telling me that the aliens, who could figure out that the information was wrong, don't have computers of their own that could be just a tiny bit better than the ones on Earth or SID? Couldn't they not have worked it out for themselves?
You would think so, yes. Yes.
Which, admittedly, is the sort of thing as a writer that would either make you go, please God, don't let Joe Public spot it, or you'd just give up on the writing and then come back and do something else. Yes. You'd go, no, everyone will spot that. It's just too obvious. And that is what took me out of the story, because you were going, well, the aliens could surely spot that. And it irritated me just a tad. Makes sense or not?
Yes, no, it does make sense. Because if I'm right about this, it's all about the aliens are trying to blow up Moonbase, right?
Yeah.
And so they're trying to come up with a flight path, hence the name of the episode, that will allow them to fly in towards Moonbase when there is a hang on, let's see. From the point of view of the moon, the Earth, it's an Earth eclipse, isn't it?
Yes.
It's
an eclipse.
We have a lunar eclipse, don't we? We have a solar eclipse. So what would this be? This would be a Terran Eclipse?
Yes, the Terran Eclipse. That sounds like a very good Ursula Le Guin novel.
There we go. So the idea being that the aliens can then fly in under the cover of the sunlight so that anybody in Moonbase can't see them and they could shoot the UFO down.
Yes.
So that in itself is an interesting concept. But yes, you're right. The idea that the aliens couldn't work out that flight path themselves without using SID is an interesting one. Yes, but then there's also the question of why does it take the aliens, and this is slight spoilers for later in the series, why does it take the aliens a long time to decide that they're going to blow up SID? Or at least damage SID?
Indeed,
that would make much more sense for them to do, wouldn't it?
That would make more sense, yeah.
So let's be clear again. We keep having to say this. We're watching this show because we really enjoy it. And,
you see,
we don't want to pull holes in it all the time.
No. We've been Doctor Who fans forever, and we've also been Doctor Who podcasters forever. And as always, we are here, no matter how bad something gets. We'd rather watch this than anything else because we've got love for it, like a member of the family. You can pick on something that's like a member of the family in a way that you wouldn't let anyone else do because you've got so much intrinsic love. And that's what we've got. We're not here to have a go or say, oh, shouldn't you have done this or this. We're not like that at all. What we're here to do is say, God, it was brilliant. let's have a chat. And that's all we're doing. And if you're not familiar with our other works, then that's kind of how we've been for years, because that's what we do. But this is nothing but love. But yeah, all right, it's a plot hole, but there's plot holes in everything.
Yeah. But that then sets up this denouement, and this is the first time we really get to see the moon sets that they've built for this show.
Indeed.
What did you think of those?
Well, like I said last time, I can see how, if you were going to fake a moon landing, you'd use the Anderson Company. Because I think they looked great, considering at this point they'd not actually set foot on the moon in real life yet. So they built this, and it looked spectacular. I mean, there are some issues I've got. Right, you can hear things on the moon and in space, but that's in order to give the models weight and gravitas. The only film that it's ever worked in is 2001, which I can't bear. And silence in space is just, I'm sorry, but my dislike for 2001 is legendary. And we can talk about that at a totally different time. But making things move in space with a noise just is needed. It's something that we've gone with, and I know it irritates a handful of people out there, but I can live with it. But there's things that I don't like, which is when things explode in space. In this program, the smoke goes off in one direction in the wind. And now, it takes you ages to figure out how to do that properly as a model maker. You have to shoot from underneath and make explosions happen outwards so that the smoke rises upwards and all that kind of nonsense. But they're just little tips and tricks. And most of these tips and tricks were sorted out by these people. This is where the action happened. This is where it worked. So tiny things like that, I'm so willing to let go, because I liked the moon shots and the moon base and the way it looked and everything. And the interceptors are great, despite the fact of their enormous design flaw of just having one shot and they're done. If you've gone to the hassle of having that level of spaceship, you have weapons. To be fair, you wouldn't even have people on board. You'd have them as drones these days with lots of extra weapons on the side, and people would drive them possibly from Earth. But that would be boring, and they would have like no tension. You wouldn't have any pilots. They would just be like disposable. But having one shot and then they're done makes no sense. Yeah. But that's only if you think about it. Let's not think about it. Let's just enjoy it and let it wash over us.
It's also one of those convenient plot contrivances, because if the interceptors were that good at shooting down UFOs, a lot of the plots of the show wouldn't happen.
Yes.
And so you have to have an organization that is not consistently good at stopping the UFOs getting through. Clearly, from Straker's point of view, if you're kind of putting yourself in the mold of him, he would love it if his team could blow up the UFO every single time before it gets to Earth. But from our point of view as viewers who want an interesting story every week, the aliens have to get in every now and again, don't they? So that what shenanigans are they up to this week?
Yes, I completely understand that. Yeah.
So you kind of have to forgive that. And we get our first spacesuit. Now, I believe last week you talked about Doppelganger.
Yes.
Or Journey to the Far Side of the Sun, as it's also known, which was a precursor to UFO, which used some of the same actors and some of the same props were left over from that film and used in UFO, and this spacesuit is one of those things. What do we think of the spacesuit?
I like them. I do. It's a bit more reminiscent of, say, the David Tennant Doctor Who spacesuit that he wears.
Yeah.
It's a bit more practical. It's not as bulky as a genuine spacesuit, and it makes more sense. It is interesting that the aliens themselves also need spacesuits, but they need them to exist in our atmosphere as well as walking around on the moon.
Yep.
Which I know we come across in a later episode at some point. But so I don't mind them. I don't know why the aliens have got chains, a bit of S&M effect on the front, but I don't know. Sylvia was making some lovely costumes. I think we just need to leave it there. But yeah, I don't mind them at all. I like that they're colour-coded, which makes much more sense than everything just being white like they are in real life, because that way you know who's who.
Yeah.
But I suppose being white helps reflect colours in light in real life. So it springs and roundabouts really for me on that one. I like them. How do you feel?
Yeah, no, I think they're a good decent stab at a practical spacesuit, as you say, and help to kind of give a kind of heft and a bulk to the characters. And obviously they don't, as with most things that don't have the budget to do weightlessness or less than 1G, they walk around on the moon as if they were on Earth, because they are. But even that, you just have to forgive that in shows, don't you? You have to just say, look, this is not practical.
You see, I wasn't getting that at all,
TV shows.
Especially in one of the episodes that's coming. I actually felt that they did the whole, we're on the moon, we're just being a bit more careful about how we're standing and walking. Not too badly. There's no bouncing.
Yeah.
You know, there's no 0G or anything, which is fine. I'm sure there's a Jerry Anderson thing that might be in my head where they're on the moon and somebody's a prospector and there's a large diamond or a ruby that's fallen in a crater that needs to be found by someone, and it's a bit Wild West in space. But a lot of the effects and sets and craft are very similar to this. Now, I can't find any record of that, but I've got a very good memory of watching that on, say, a Saturday afternoon. But I might have invented it, so if it isn't, I'm having it back.
Okay, well, if you know what that is, email us, UFOcast@yahoo.com. There is obviously Captain Scarlet on the moon, which I'm sure you will recall. And I think we need to talk about that here, actually, because of the moon. I think they call it a moon hopper in this episode, but they generally call them moon mobiles. There were 2 episodes of Captain Scarlet set on the moon. Lunarville 7 and Crater of something. Probably
Destruction?
Something like that.
Doom,
where
Death.
They discovered that the moon base in Captain Scarlet has been taken over by the Mysterons, and the Mysterons are building a Mysteron city in a Crater 101. That's it, Crater 101. The Mysterons are building a Mysteron city on the moon, and obviously Captain Scarlet and co have to go and destroy it. And they come out of that city with a crystal with which to communicate with the Mysterons. And in that story, they have these moon things, which essentially it's the same in UFO, but the way that they move around is somewhat different. I don't know if you recall the difference, Michael.
Does it jump? Do they hop like a grasshopper?
Yes, so the Captain Scarlet ones do this whole thing where they jump through the air and the legs kind of fold down as the. That
sounds awfully familiar, because I think I was expecting to see that this time and they didn't.
Yes.
So it must have come from somewhere.
And so by UFO, they've clearly, I'm assuming it's exactly the same model or the same kind of models recycled, but the legs are just fixed and these things float. And they move a lot faster than the Captain Scarlet ones too.
I've just been watching a documentary about the making of UFO, and they showed a clip of the works beforehand, and there's actually a still of the thing that looks just like the Moonhopper, but doesn't quite look like it, from Captain Scarlet being blown up slightly from an outside. And I was thinking, oh, it's a similar design. So it is very, very similar, if not the same model.
Very, very, very similar.
And of course, the windows look just like the Eagle windows from Space 1999, again on the moon. Now, I've also read recently that Space 1999 was originally pitched as UFO 90.
Yeah, it was kind of UFO
as an evolution, as like 10 years further on.
Yeah.
Where they'd beaten the aliens, but then that evolved into Space 1999 with the whole atomic waste and moon leaving Earth's orbit and all that clearly made up and pointless science defying nonsense.
Yes. Well, I think I've said before, I'm not familiar with Space 1999. I've seen maybe 1 or 2 episodes over my time, but from what I understand, UFO was going to have a second series.
Yes.
And they kind of expanded Moonbase. The idea was that SHADO was going to move entirely from Earth up to the Moonbase.
Yes.
Which I guess saves you from having to hide it underneath a film studio. And when those plans fell through, I think because UFO didn't do as well as it should have done, that plan was shelved, and that they then were like, right, well, we'll need to make something else with these ideas that we've done, and that became
Is it the case that that Anderson and co, the live action end of things, moved on to making the Persuaders?
I'm not entirely sure of the
Or
chronology
is
of
because-
things, but that is entirely possible.
So it went. So Lou Grade went. We like what you do with people. Make this instead.
Now,
I am going to have to do some research on that one because I
you
could
keep
be talking
waffling
utter
while
nonsense.
I look at IMDb,
Right.
and I will give you
Okay.
I
The
will give you
nonsense that I'd heard
an
was
order of things.
right. Well, this is me waffling. So the nonsense that I'd heard was that Lou Grade likes always the next big thing. So at the end of this series, rather than make a series 2, now weirdly I'd thought that series 1, like the 2 box sets, were series 1 and series 2 of UFO, because you got 2 box sets of DVDs. Now obviously with the Blu-ray you get 1. So I thought that it was series 1 and series 2, and then only later on do I discover that all 26 episodes are just one series, which is kind of mind-blowing if you think about it.
Yep.
So then you've got that going on. So and then Lou Grade says, no, I want you to move on to the next thing. What about this Roger Moore, Tony Curtis thing? But I don't know if that is the case or not.
So you're not quite right. It wasn't the Persuaders. It was the Protectors.
Ah, right. And you began with P.
Yes, it began with P and ends in RS. So that was the next one, and that was Robert Vaughan, Nairi Dawn Paunter, and Tony Anholt.
Yes.
That was
now, did that program become Department S eventually? Or was that something totally different?
I have no idea.
Oh,
I've never seen
this
it.
is the point where you need Neil Perriman.
Yeah,
this is his area of expertise.
Yeah.
But we have no Neil Perriman to hand, so let's continue.
No. So we're just yes. So yes, there was a gap. UFO was done in 69-70, and Space 99 was 1975. So there's obviously quite a gap.
Yes.
In that kind of timeline that we're talking about.
So we're talking about the designs of the
episode. Yes.
Well, yes, we do. We do. Great. Hang on. Apart from the fact that I went on and on far too much about them having separate beds, the thing that I mentioned last time that we haven't talked about this time, and it's this episode specific, was where he was interrogated by Skype. Bishop couldn't even be bothered to go into the room, and he had to appear on a black and white monitor and shout abuse down a screen at poor George Cole. Before they find out about the traitor. We haven't even discussed the finding out of the traitor. We've discussed George Cole going to the moon and taking on the aliens himself, because obviously that's a good idea if your entire moon-based defense counts on someone who's already been got at. So hopefully there'd be interceptors hiding behind a hill going, actually we are ready to fire just once this guy fails.
I think the whole point of that was to say that the only way to stop the aliens, given that they had this flight plan, was a man on the moon with a bazooka.
Yes.
And obviously the episode is written that way so that there can be some potential redemption for Roper.
Yes.
So although it might not make practical sense, it makes character arc sense. In that this is a tragic figure who is given his shot at redemption. He succeeds in defeating the aliens and then suffocates in his spacesuit.
You're right. It's a TV using toothpaste to try and save himself. We try and I have to keep reminding myself this is not a space defense procedural drama. It's a piece of drama. It's a piece of TV fiction. And I have to keep reminding myself that it's not a documentary about how things were in the 80s. It's a drama where you've got character arcs, you've got redemption, you've got Wild West themes, you've got all sorts of nonsense. But you've got electric cars. Everything seems to be electric. You've got gull wing doors. Everyone drives around in a shadow mobile. I get all that. That's just part for the course. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
And we've covered my major problems. So the thing that is worth mentioning, of course, is that the whole program hinges on Sid the computer being used to work things out. So what Commander Straker's got in his office is a very important piece of technology, a slide rule, which totally dates the program and is great.
Oh, yes, of course. I meant to mention that. I'm glad that you brought it up. Now, I am of an age where we had pocket calculators. At least when we got to GCSE level, we had a calculator and a non-calculator paper.
Sounds very familiar.
Are you old enough to remember slide rules, or are you young enough as well?
I was the first year to do GCSEs.
Right.
They came in for me. And basically, I could talk at great length about my maths GCSE, but there was indeed 2 papers at least. We had calculators at the time, and I remember because I was in a higher maths set group, we were allowed to buy through the school because they managed to get a discount. Now this is in the 80s. This is a very expensive piece of kit, and I still own this, the scientific calculator. And you could get them through the school because they were so expensive. I think they were about 20 quid. Now at the time, 20 quid was a gigantic sum of cash.
Yeah.
And it really was a massive investment. And lucky, that Casio calculator still works, and I know which drawer it's in. So it was a bit of an investment for the time, because everyone now would be like, yeah, it's a calculator, they're 2 quid. This was a proper scientific calculator. So yeah, back in I think it was 1988 I did my GCSEs, because that's when they were brought in the northeast. I think they were brought in further down south of the country a couple of years before that. But that's when they came in, yes. So yes, we did have calculators at school. I'm not that old, thank you very much. But yes, slide rules were my father's generation. I was only born in 1972, for God's sake.
I do apologise. My parents certainly used slide rules. So before we get on to our Actor Watch for the week, we just need to round out the traitor. So it turns out that what was going on at the beginning of the episode was that the aliens had captured him and planted some kind of electric thing in his head, and that they were then controlling him to do their bidding.
Yes, and he was also the person who worked at SHADO HQ, because at the beginning he phones in work and says, I'm sorry I'm late, I'm running a bit late, I apologise, I'll be in soon, thanks. And then he phones in and he turns up late, and he's also one of the people interrogating, and I'm doing the rabbit ears thing, George Cole. So he's there, he's part of human resources.
He's part of him.
Yeah.
And they trick him into revealing himself by releasing Roper, and then he goes off to shoot Roper's wife, and she makes a mess of him with a shotgun, and he shoots her. So everybody
But you
dies.
don't know at this point whether she's alive or dead. This is the shotgun which, of course, was loaded in Act 1.
Yes. Yeah. And gets fired.
She is hysterical. You don't really miss her. She's such a two-dimensional piece of work.
It's the fact that she shot him with the gun and then just kind of slides down the wall frozen in fear, allowing him to get hold of his pistol and shoot her. A more kind of action-packed character would have grabbed the gun
and shot them again,
and shot him again to make sure he was dead.
Yeah, and shot him with his gun. And
shot him with his gun,
and then kicked the body. Yeah, and kept going.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But yes, it's a rather sad end to an episode again. The bleak tone of UFO continues, but we are still with it. And we have just one actor this week to highlight in Doctor Who Watch.
I must admit, I've got it. I spotted this one.
You spotted this one, okay.
did. I did.
Michael,
it's Iron Gron.
It's all yours.
This is Iron Gron, the bloke who was in Boone as his mate, and I don't know his name, but it was Iron Gron from the Time Warrior.
Yes.
And he's also in the episode with the drug dealing and the Tom Baker and the video projector on the wall. Yes.
Yes.
There you go.
Michael, you have got everything apart from the name of the actor. So I will fill that in for you. David Dacre.
There you go. I got it.
Who in this episode of UFO, for those who don't know the Doctor Who, he plays a very minor role of a SHADO operative who gets to drive to the house to find out that the woman's been shot. And he, as Michael said, plays Iron Gron in The Time Warrior, which is John Pertwee's story. And the name's completely gone out of my head. He plays the captain of the ship in The Nightmare of Eden. And Rig, I believe, is his name.
It is. Yes.
So there we go. That's our Actor Watch this week. There's nobody else to comment on, I'm afraid. But we will have, I'm sure, more to talk about next week.
We certainly will have. But next time, we will see you then. So that's the end of this time's UFOcast. So until next time, my name's Michael. Be seeing you.
And I'm Luke. And next time we'll be looking at episode 4, Exposed.